Anytime you beg another man to set you free, you'll never be free. Freedom is something that you have to do for yourself.
Okay, so day 14 just wrapped up. It was an interesting day today. They started off with Mike Hearn taking the stand to start the day, and then there was a long lunch break. With Mike Hearn, they talked about how there was a series of emails between him and John Matonis and Craig, arranging a dinner between them. And there was a bit of a conflicting story there where the email between John and Craig said that he had just met with Mike Hearn and that Mike wanted to meet Craig. And uh, Mike Hearn pretty much he remembered it the other way. He said that it was Craig who wanted to meet him. Um, so they kind of discussed that a little bit. But they said that they had this dinner that was arranged, and he was giving sort of uncertain answers. Um, and it caused a bit of, I think it was kind of irritating Craig's lawyer. He was very short with him. I like the guy. He's kind of like a grumpy old man, but he's very direct and to the point. And um, I think there was one particular answer he gave where he's like, I've definitely never seen this, I think. And he's like, well, what is it? Like, you've never seen it before, or you have? Um, just that sort of thing. He just wasn't accepting sort of wishy-washy answers, um, which is nice because we haven't really seen a lot from Craig's lawyers yet. But they seem to be performing well. Just they seem to do well today when they had the opportunity. So they discussed this dinner that was arranged. Okay, so at this dinner, Mike Hearn said that he was asking technical questions of Craig, but he wasn't able to get answers from him. He said that Craig was kind of stuttering or stumbling when he tried to give answers, but he was saying that Stephen Matthews, who was there at the dinner, uh, was kind of telling Craig not to talk about certain things because there was pending patent applications that were relevant to the topics that they were discussing. And it was one of these things where he said that, like, earlier, before they discussed this particular part, he said that he was always interested in Bitcoin scaling. And he said that he eventually sold all of his coins and said that Bitcoin had failed because he didn't thought that it would scale properly. Um, but there was a point in the cross-examination where they asked him what he thought of Craig's or nChain's ideas for Bitcoin scaling. And he said that he was unfamiliar with it and denied knowing much about nChain, which just it on its face doesn't seem believable. Uh, it's really hard to believe that you wouldn't know what's going on in the Bitcoin space when you're so intimately involved in it that you wouldn't know what's going on with Craig Wright or BSV's ideas for scaling. But this is something that Adam Back also said on the stand yesterday. And these statements are so outrageously hard to believe that the only way I can justify it or rationalize it or make sense of it personally is that this is the defense these people are taking just in case Craig wins. Because they don't want to be on the record in court saying that they understood the other way of scaling Bitcoin in the event that Craig wins. Because then people are going to have a lot of questions for them. It's going to be, why didn't you talk about this? Why did you never mention these other ideas for scaling instead of the small blocker idea, always pushing that one narrative? And if you're ignorant, then you can always plead ignorance, right? You can always say that I didn't know. And I think that's what these people might say after the fact. It'd be like, oh, like, we accepted this narrative too. We're just like everybody else. Like, we thought this was the way to go because this was the way that it was presented to us and we ran with it. I think a lot of people are going to play that card in the event that Craig wins. So I think that's why they've made those outrageous statements that are so hard to believe. I think it's really just, it's a defensive position they have plausible deniability. They can say it and nobody can prove that they knew these things, so they're going to deny. And even though on its face it's very hard to believe, they're both sticking to that story that they have never heard of Craig's ideas for scaling Bitcoin or nChain's ideas for scaling Bitcoin. To me, that's sort of telling that they're worried that Craig might win. That's just my opinion. That's how I read into it. But Mike Hearn, his cross-examination, it was very brief. It was only a half hour. I think they were completely done within a half hour, 30 minutes. Yeah, I mean, that was my takeaway. There was a few other things that they discussed in some detail, but that was the gist of it. Next up was the C++ creator, Howard Hinant. Hinant? I think I got that right, mostly. So, I mean, this was fairly brief as well, but it was important for Craig's case because essentially what happened with his cross-examination, Craig's lawyers got up and they asked him if each of the steps Craig said that he had taken were possible, and essentially just laid them out, showed them on screen, like, does this do this? Like, is it possible? Yes, 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 yes. So pretty much he said that all the steps taken by Craig were possible, but it was his professional opinion that it was very unlikely, to the point that it's extremely unbelievable that those steps were taken. I mean, very unusual steps may have been taken by Craig or by Satoshi because there is some watermark. And I was just looking into it a little more closely. There's some people who've been talking about it. Xiaowei Lu's been talking about this particular method where it may have been hidden within the latex file itself, and not within the actual PDF of the Bitcoin white paper. So there's that added possibility. But I mean, even in the event that that's the case, there would have to be no uncertainty about the authenticity of the latex document that Craig's provided. So he would still have to verify that it's authentic. But I mean, he may have compiled it in a very strange way if there's some steganography within it. And I've just been looking through some prior comments that Craig had made, some public posts that Craig had made about steganography. And he seems to have a deep appreciation for it, and just the things that have been proposed by Xiaowei Lu, and that it might be hidden in the latex file, I find that a bit more easier to believe than the idea that it's just hidden somewhere within the white paper and nobody's seen it yet. That kind of, anything is possible, I guess, but if there's some sort of clever steganography that is unknown to people, or there's some unknown method of checking for it, perhaps. But the method that he laid out, it seems more plausible. So it could be the case that some weird steps were taken in compiling the document for the sake of imposing some sort of watermark on it. It's something I'm more willing to entertain now that I've looked a little bit more into it. But there's going to be a demonstration tomorrow in the court where they're going to be going through the latex processing, and I'm very curious to see what happens tomorrow. I'm very excited for tomorrow. Because this visualization that's being presented to the court was compiled by the dev team's lawyers, but Craig's lawyers are going to be presenting to the judge at the time that this is played to him, this animation is played to him, specific details that they said that they want to point out to the judge at the time that he views these animations. So I'm expecting a spicy day tomorrow. Last up for the day, Bryce Wilcox O'Hearn. So he was the former CEO of the Electra Coin Company. He just recently left the electric coin company. He was their CEO until December 2023, so just a few months ago he left that position. But the electric coin company, it used to be known as the Zcash company, and they started Zcash. But he was someone who was on the cypherpunk mailing list that received the Bitcoin white paper. So he got the Bitcoin white paper through that mailing list, and he said that he read the Bitcoin white paper initially, but that he didn't take it seriously because he believed that there was a problem with um, having a decentralized timestamp system, uh, where he thought it would need some sort of um, coordination of the clocks, pretty much. But I mean, that problem I think is solved in the Bitcoin white paper itself. I think he said he was sort of embarrassed by it, that he didn't take it seriously enough as he should have at first. And he said it was probably a year and a half later or something like that he started getting involved when he saw people using it on I think it was agorism.com was the website, or some sort of agorism website, which piqued my interest because if you don't know what agorism is, look it up. It's just kind of the idea of building an alternative economic system. If you don't like the way things are working, build an alternative. It's just a smarter way of dealing with certain problems, is instead of trying to change them, just build an alternative. Um, he was very confident on the stand, and at first he just seemed very comfortable. Like, it seemed like he had nothing to hide really, but then it seemed kind of like there were certain details where he was trying to conceal. Like, it seemed like there was conflicting documentation about when he was doing certain things. When he first became involved with Bitcoin or using Bitcoin, uh, it was suggested by Craig's lawyers that he may have been sent Bitcoin by Satoshi. So that would have been before the time that he said that he'd gotten involved with Bitcoin. And it seems to me like, I don't know if it might just be a little bit of a tax cheating thing happening there, where he may have some capital gains he doesn't want to confess to. Um, but Zcash itself, I mean, it's not really a great privacy coin. It's great in the sense that they came up with a fairly smart way of using zero knowledge proofs, but it's not implemented properly, and it isn't private by default. It's optional privacy, and it's a whole centralized setup. It's again set up by the Zcash company, so it's like this company that launched it, and there's a lot of things that make people in the privacy space not really respect Zcash as a privacy coin. So just from that perspective alone, um, this guy is kind of weird, where I'm not quite sure what to make of him. I almost thought of, during his cross-examination, he's sort of looked like a mix of Joe Biden and Jordan Peterson. He kind of had similar mannerisms to both of them, like he could be a fusion of the two. Uh, but there wasn't really a whole lot that came out from his cross-examination that was interesting. They questioned him a lot about his intent behind creating a more anonymous crypto, a more anonymous blockchain currency, digital currency than Bitcoin. Um, it kind of underscores my concerns that there's going to be some sort of pushback against privacy networks or actual cryptocurrencies after this. Um, that there's going to be a regulatory push to restrict privacy and anonymity in the blockchain and crypto world. And I mean, we've been seeing that for a long time. It's something that everyone's kind of been preparing for within that space, we see what governments are saying about it. We know that they don't particularly have a friendly view towards it, so they can't stop it, and they won't be able to stop it, but they can cause a lot of problems, and it's just something that I see coming out of this. It's being talked about too widely, and it's just one of those undertones of in the debate that is raging online right now. It's there. It's being mentioned too frequently for it not to be something that's going to emerge out of this. In the case that Craig is victorious in court, anyway. If he's not victorious in court, then I think it'll be status quo for a lot longer. But again, yeah, things could really change quite a bit in the crypto space if Craig wins this trial. I'll make a video sometime later in the future, um, probably in the next week or two, definitely before the last week of the trial. I'll have that out, talking about potentially what could happen with one outcome or the other, and kind of weighing out the evidence for each side. I'll make a good video, a longer format video, like at least a half hour, 45 minutes or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not too excited about anything that came out today. It was really everything that was said was what was expected, but it was really good that the creator of C++ said that everything that Craig said he did is possible. Um, I mean, that was probably my biggest takeaway from the day, is that things Craig said he could do can be done. There was just one thing he kept talking about, this undefined behavior, where when you do certain things, it can produce unknown results, um, which might explain some of the inconsistencies in the metadata. We'll have to wait and see the animation tomorrow. So tune in tomorrow. I'm excited. Like, share, and subscribe.